Welcome back to Oh and Another Thing. It's your favorite news and politics podcast. It's your favorite news and politics YouTube show, program, thing. It's your favorite place to get the content you need to stay informed in this constantly ever-changing news and media landscape that we live in. Happy to have you back. First-time listeners, first-time watchers, happy to have you. Again, welcome to Oh and Another Thing. I am your host, Vince Patrone. Bert from Beans, our producer, is in the house today. He's with us. He's been working hard on getting the program together all weekend long. Also, side note here, Oh and Another Thing is brought to you by Bertram's. It's a restaurant like no other. Any fare you can imagine. Dust balls, crumbs of graham, and Toll House cookie. Anything you'd like served in a 5-star quality dining experience below the bed. Only at Bertram's. The best food under the bed. So, thank you, Bertram, for letting your restaurant sponsor our podcast today. So, Bertram's, again, if you're ever underneath a bed and you need a snack, Bertram's is your place to go. Again, welcome back. Your host, Vince Patrone. We have Giovanna with us in studio today, operating the camera, giving us her 2 cents whenever she can. Gang's all here. Where to watch? You can watch on YouTube. That's really it. If you're watching now on YouTube, you already know that you can watch on YouTube. Let's say you're watching on YouTube, but you got to run soon. Where can I listen on the go? Well, without having to close me off, because I know whenever you go mobile on YouTube, you have to leave it running in your pocket. Drains your screen life. Or your battery time, I should say. And your screen life also in turn, but I digress. Follow us on Spotify. Subscribe to us there. Subscribe to us on Spotify. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcast, Apple Music, whatever you call it, wherever you get it from Apple. Subscribe to us via Podbean. That's our online host where you can always find every episode of Oh and Another Thing. You can go back, listen to episodes from all the way back when we started this just last year. So go check out all the podcasts you've missed on those different platforms. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, anywhere podcasts are found, you can watch the program by going to YouTube, searching for Oh and Another Thing. You'll find us there. Subscribe to us there. That way you never miss an episode. That way you can see the visual component of Oh and Another Thing, which to the extent is really just all these portraits of Bertram that we have done, made, created. So we have all these up here. So you get the visual element if you follow us and listen on YouTube. No matter how you're ingesting us, injecting us, we thank you for being here. So we have a great show for you today. We got to give a big shout out to Mike Wilson, our listener of the week. Thank you, Mike, for commenting and reminding us that if the president were removed via the 25th Amendment, it would lead to our destruction. So thank you, Mike, for reminding us of that. If you are interested in being a listener or viewer of the week, please feel free to go leave us a comment in the comment section. Who knows, maybe we'll even read it here on Oh and Another Thing, and we'll put your comment on the air. It's a good screen time for you, good way for you to get your brand out there. So again, Mike Wilson, thank you for being a listener all week long and stepping in when we need you most. So thank you, Mike. On to today's business. Today we have the latest on coronavirus. We have the need for not only citizens to be able to vote by mail, but for Congress to be able to vote by mail. Why it sucks so bad they canceled the New York presidential primary. Real bummer. We'll talk all about that. The ignore the president argument. Talk about that too today. All that, all the other things on this week's Oh and Another Thing. So let's dive right on in with the latest on coronavirus. So again, the latest here, always from the Washington Post as of right now. We use the Washington Post and the AP for all of our news here at Oh and Another Thing. So the latest from the Washington Post on coronavirus. To start, we have some breaking news for this podcast. And breaking, House leaders have abandoned plans to return to Washington next week. Really timely for them to decide this, as that's one of our main topics for today. Less than 24 hours after members were told to prepare to meet. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer told reporters the change was made in light of advice from the attending physician at the Capitol and the continued spread of the virus in Washington and its suburbs, as in quote here, the numbers in the District of Columbia are going up, not down, he said. Meanwhile, confirmed cases of U.S. infections are nearing 1 million, again in the U.S., and pressure is mounting on the White House to develop a national testing strategy, which the president announced yesterday at the formerly canceled, now back on, daily press conferences. I don't know if they're daily or just at will now, but the president had one yesterday, stated that he was going to have a great national testing program that required states to do the lead. So, great national program that leans on the states. So, great job from the president there. Some more news with the coronavirus here. Patients with certain cancers are nearly 3 times more likely to die of COVID-19 than non-cancer patients. That's according to a new study. New Zealand's month-long lockdown ended Tuesday after officials said they had almost entirely eradicated the coronavirus. We must apologize. Again, we live in a goddamn family neighborhood. But you'd be shocked how few people treat it as if it's a goddamn family neighborhood with someone who's trying to record a podcast or someone who's trying to record their latest lifestyle video. Lifestyle.
Is that me? Is that
yeah, I guess. I don't know. What do you call it? I don't know. It's all about a lifestyle. So I don't know. Anyway. So apologies for all the noise outside. We're keeping the windows open because it's nice out, and we're not allowed to go outside. But for the first time in who knows how long, it's only 58 right now, but it's going to be 65 degrees at some point today, so we are letting all that into the studio.
We have to take the small wins when we can. So we have the
top down here at and another thing, so to speak. Back to business. The CDC added 6 new symptoms, including sore throat and loss of sense of smell, suggesting that health experts are learning more about how the virus affects patients. Some of these new symptoms, let's see, here we have them pulled up here. Chills, repeated shaking with the chills, muscle pain, headache, sore throat, and a new loss of taste or smell, which is a very careful wording of loss of taste or smell. Perhaps an insult toward people that don't have much taste to begin with. Anyway, trying to keep it light here. Britain's health authority warned physicians about an apparent rise in the number of children with a multi-system inflammatory state requiring intensive care. I don't know what all that means because, again, I am not a doctor. I went to school for journalism. However, that may be related to COVID-19 in a lot of these kids in Britain. So they're finding out more about it every day, learning more about it every day, which is good news. And days after floating the idea of injecting highly toxic disinfectants to fight COVID-19, Trump has said he didn't know why emergency hotlines were flooded with calls asking about the idea. I can't imagine. Trump said. That's literally the quote. He said, I can't imagine. He said, I can't imagine why there would be so many phone calls about people ingesting bleach and other household disinfectants when, hey, maybe it's because you were the one saying to do it just last Friday. So a weekend full of bleach ingesting and all that has led us to this week. We have a lot to talk about today, including, well, we won't talk too much about it, but U.S. intelligence agencies warned Trump about the coronavirus in more than a dozen classified briefings in January and February while he continued to downplay the threat, meaning the president knew coronavirus was coming as early as the start of January, as early as the start of 2020. However, he and his administration decided that they would rather downplay the virus, pretend it wasn't real, act as if it was just another Democratic hoax or Democratic conspiracy to ruin his electoral chances. Because of spending too much doing that, we are where we are today. And reports are now showing that that is not only just something we kind of all figured, but something that is very much true, in that the administration just didn't care soon enough. And because of them not caring soon enough, 60,000 people are dead, or close to 60,000 people are dead because of this. So, a lot of bad news for the administration, a lot of bad news for ordinary Americans who just want to live to see the next day. But the good news is that they are learning more. We have new symptoms to watch out for. So if you're someone who does get a little worried that they might have the COVID-19 and maybe it does weigh on your brain a little bit more, you have some more symptoms to check yourself up against. Bad news, those symptoms are also very similar to the symptoms that we're going through now for cold and allergy season. I can speak to that directly as I'm on a schedule right now where every other day I'm lucky enough to get a crazy sinus migraine that practically debilitates and knocks me out. In fact, 2 Fridays ago, after I finished the recording segment of Oh and Another Thing, I had to lay down because I literally blacked out in pain from my sinuses. So, whereas I don't have the coronavirus, I do have very inflamed sinuses that are causing me a lot of pain. So, a lot to be on the lookout for. Some new things from the CDC to keep an eye on to keep you and those close to you safe. Anyway, so obviously there is a lot going on right now. We only have so much to talk about, so let's just dive on into the point of the program where I get to pontificate for about 40 minutes here. So, as we saw, and some timely news this week today specifically from the House of Representatives saying that they're not going to reconvene, that they're not going to get back together anytime soon because of the coronavirus, not getting any better in D.C. Numbers still rising there, so it's not safe for them to come back to work. The way it is for many Americans that are being forced to still go to work and do their jobs. So maybe it's a good idea for us to start talking about how we can make it so our government doesn't have to shut down, essentially, every time a pandemic or a natural disaster or something happens that we have to keep people from going to work or going to, and by people I mean specifically legislators who can't go to work to cast votes on bills and ballots that are very important to the American people having good, normal, successful, regular functioning lives. Because what we're seeing right now is obviously the people that we have elected to vote for us, our representatives, aren't able to actually have votes right now because of this coronavirus. Many have been sent back home to their districts, back to where they live. They're isolating. They're not supposed to go to the Capitol to vote. So what that creates is, one, a lot of Zoom meetings between congressmen and senators and people in legislatures, and everybody's on Zoom banging out big policy proposals that matter on a large scale to all of us. It's happening over Zoom and it's happening over teleconference, which is fine. That is not a problem because that's going to be a reality for a lot of workplaces going forward, is that a lot of these jobs are going to have to happen in a more cyber setting, a lot more e-meeting, if you will. So that's fine. The way they're discussing these bills and topics is fine. However, they need to have a way to vote, so that way they're not having these conversations and then giving the power to decide on how the vote goes or how the choices are made or how the bills are amended, end up in the hands of essentially 4 people, which right now are Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Mitch McConnell, and Kevin McCarthy. A real crack squad. I know we're fine with about 25% of that group. Nancy Pelosi. We know Schumer can be a bit wiggly at times. I don't want to insult him too much. We need him to do something for us here, but we know that he can be a little wishy-washy, a little what's that term Biden used? Little Johnny come lately, as the president, as our future president would say, hopefully. But I digress. And then of course you have Mitch McConnell, who loves congressional gridlock more than anybody, and Kevin McCarthy, who's really just there for the picture. So we really have Nancy Pelosi doing a lot of the work for all of us right now, and even she can take too many concessions, as we've seen. So we have 4 people making a lot of decisions for us as a country that may not be the people that all of us want making the decisions for us. Therefore, our democracy right now is not truly representative of us, as it never truly is. More on that in another podcast. But it has become imperative that we have a way for every representative to have their voice heard, every representative to make an impact, every representative to have a fair say in what is happening legislatively in this country. It's one thing to have Zoom meetings. It's one thing to convey your points and opinions via your Zoom chat to your speaker, to your Senate representative, or whomever. It's one thing to do that, but it's another thing to be actually represented in the room. So that aspect's never probably going to change, well, until they have a regular session back. So until this pandemic passes over and we're ready to start having Congress back, they're not going to have that real intimate, personal setting of coming up with legislation, which I don't know if it requires an intimate, personal setting. However, you're not going to have that personal setting. So the least we can do is figure out a way to make it as personal as possible while being away from reality and the world that we once knew. So, first thing we need to do, House and Senate, first thing we need to do is start a legislative postal service. I'm not talking about the regular mail here. I'm not talking about the mail that gets, filled with junk. What are they called? Whenever you can, Publishers Clearinghouse junk. Stuff like that. None of that's involved here. It's a special postal service operated only in these special cases. A crack squad of post people who will have one responsibility and one responsibility to deliver their package from the house to the house of the House member for voting, reading, and then for counting when it goes back to the House. No other mail, no other parcels, no other packages are involved in this service. And you do it Hall of Fame style. I don't know if you know what that means. So, in the sports world, there are Hall of Fames. There's Baseball Hall of Fame, NFL Hall of Fame, NBA Hall of Fame, or National Basketball Association, or that's the same thing. What do they call it? I don't know if it's the NBA Hall of Fame. They have an NBA Hall of Fame, then there's the NCAA Hall of Fame, then I think there's another Hall of Fame for basketball too. I digress. There's a billion Hall of Fames in sports for all kinds of things. Even sports writers get a Hall of Fame. Regardless. In a lot of cases, the voting for the Hall of Fame, and in fact for a lot of major sports awards, MVPs, Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, stuff like that, come down to mail voting systems where you check a box and you send it in based off someone's work. And you mail it in and you check yes for a person, or you don't check and you don't vote for that person. So, these representatives at home, they would get a packet, a manila folder, if you will, with Bill 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, however many there are. All the text along with that bill, they'd review it and mail it back with a yes vote or a no vote. It'd go back to the special system for congressional use only. There'd be very little time for tampering to occur. That's why it's not online. It could be online, but we can't trust the internet. Remember, we cannot trust anything on the internet. We can't trust that these votes wouldn't be manipulated by hackers or anything like that. So it has to be paper, and it has to be postal, and it has to be a little secret, a little shady. So paper votes via the mail on issues, tick down a sheet. Yes for this, no for this, yes for this, no for this. Little summaries. They get the full bill. Everything that would happen normally just at home via this at-home voting mailing process. And you would have to do it. This is the little caveat here. It couldn't just be one bill at a time. It couldn't just be, well, we're going to vote on this bill, this package, this bill, this package. No. It has to be multiple bills. That way, we could even essentially get more done with this system, because if you send out big packages of proposed legislations from various congressional members, send that back, send that to the people to vote, they read it, they say, okay, my district would like this, and they vote and they send it back. It's a simple system, and it's the same system we should be using for mail-in voting for just regular elections for us citizens to use. And in fact, if they were to implement this kind of system and figure out a way to get this kind of system in place for them to vote and vote safely and effectively and have our government work how it should be working, this could open up the door for a lot of opportunities for us to have more at-home voting on all kinds of issues. We talked a couple weeks ago on the program about how we could have a conference to figure out the Democratic Party platform, to figure out exactly what it is that Joe Biden is necessarily running on. We could have that with mail-in voting on any issue. Any issue you want, mail it out to the actual voters, they send it back, and it's done. You could do it for any kind of major thing. The same way we're asking for them on another thing, to start doing that for the House of Representatives, for the Senate, for all congressional voting. That way we're not trapped in gridlock because of this virus. Because what it looks like right now, the reason it's so important that this gets done now, it looks like the House of Representatives doesn't want to come back and work. The average cynical American voter, to the person watching Fox News all day, to the person getting their news from Breitbart or from the president or from whoever they choose to get their news from, a lot of them are seeing House members choose not to go back to vote. And then, obviously, the House is majority Democrats. So House members from the Republican side take to Twitter, say, well, we want to come back to work, it's just the Democrats. And then the Senate says, well, we're all ready to work, it's just the Democrats in the House. And it looks like it's the Democrats holding up progress in the country, essentially. It's a bad optics look, and not just that. That's like the basic level of how people are viewing this, optically speaking. Not even to speak to the necessity for it, just legislatively and in terms of getting things done. But in terms of how it looks right now for the House of Representatives to just say, you know, we're not going to come back in session, even though it's the smart thing to do for everybody involved's health, everybody that would have to be there at on the Hill, including security personnel, including staffers, and including concession workers in the dining halls of the Congress. Whatever they want to do to make this work, it requires a lot more people than just getting the senators there, getting the House of Representatives there. So they need to start taking steps now, so it looks like they're not doing nothing, you know? Because it looks like a lot of doing nothing right now to a lot of people. Not to the person who's paying attention constantly, plugged into the news 24/7, can't stop scrolling Twitter in between plays of Roller Coaster Tycoon on their phone. To that person, they see what's going on, but to the average person who doesn't spend their day on Twitter injecting news into their systems like it's Bleach, they don't know what's really going on. So it's important that Democrats think it's important that the House takes steps now while they have control now to keep that control and make it look like they're, and not even just make it look like, do the dang job of being the House of Representatives and start getting some stuff passed. Get this CARES 4 Act done. There's another stimulus bill that we're going to need already. They're close to having to shut down the Paycheck Protection Program again. They're already close to having to do that. So that means we're going to need another stimulus for that. Why not be drafting that bill already? Why not already have that done? Why not use the House? Use it. We have it. Use it. Anyway, it's just another case of Democrats needing to take the extra step to make sure that things are running smoothly and that there's no shortfalls for them in November. This is one of them. So it doesn't look like they're not doing nothing. Because right now the ball, as we've seen from polling, is kind of in the Democrats' court right now. It's not smart to play an election not to lose, but Democrats can really play this election to win now, from the Senate to the House to the presidency. It's all there for them. So we'll digress. We'll see where things are next week. I know Pelosi was talking about coming up with a way for them to do the legislative process from home. We'll see if they can move on to that this week, having done the stimulus last week. So we'll see. There's still a lot to do, again, in bailing out the average American citizen who needs a paycheck. Lots still to be done for that. Lots to be done for regular people. We'll see if that happens. There's just one step to take here, and that is to get at-home voting for Congress. And also for us, the regular at-home citizens, but for congressional leaders, they should be able to vote from home and do their jobs from home effectively the same way you are able to work and do your advertising jobs from home or whatever you're doing from home. So, that being said, when we come back, we're going to talk all about the canceled primary in New York City, why that's a bummer, and then when we put a lid on this thing for the week, we'll come back and we'll talk about, well, you'll see. It's a pretty nuanced subject, but we'll talk about it when we come back. More. Oh, and another thing, right after this. Hey gang, how are you? It's me, I didn't leave. I haven't left this seat yet. I know it seemed like we might have been taking a break there, but we weren't. I'm sure it didn't, because I'm not going to edit in a break, so anyway. Acting as if this is a professional broadcast. Pardon me. So we're here to talk today, for the O and another PSA, about last week was Sidewalk Conversations. This week, too loud on the speakerphone conversations. If you're someone who likes to go out to your car, let's say you've been cooped up with the kids all day, maybe you've been cooped up with, I don't know, maybe you're in a relationship that requires a little more distance than some. Maybe you need to get out every now and then, maybe you need to go just just get fresh air, clear your head. Maybe you got to your car, maybe you throw in your AirPods, maybe you throw in your car's Bluetooth, and you call a buddy up and say, man, not gonna believe this shit, fella. And you know, that's okay to do. It's okay to call your friends and vent and talk and, call your loved ones and all that. Do that even more so nowadays. But what we ask, literally all we ask is that you turn down the volume in your car. I can't imagine that creates for what some would call a good conversation to have to hear the echoing off your car windows and off the entire car itself, all that echoing. I'm sure that's not great for the conversation as it is. But you know who it else isn't great for? Those of us who live 4 stories up and still have to hear your fucking conversation echo throughout the entire neighborhood because you have to have it one on speakerphone and then 2 turned up very loud. It's like whenever you listen to a radio station and they're doing the calling portion and someone leaves the radio turned up too loud, so it's just like a garbled up junky mess on the other end of what's broadcasting, and they have to tell the person, hey John, why don't you turn down that volume? I know you're trying to drown out the kids. Ha ha ha. And everybody has a good laugh at the expense of the kids, and everybody thinks it's fine and dandy. But then the kids on the other end here, and they say, wow, maybe we are causing a lot more trouble for mom and dad than we should be. Anyway, turn down your car speakerphones. We don't need to hear the conversations out loud. We don't need to hear your garbled audio. We don't want to hear it sound like a static microphone at a bad live performance. It's not what we're here for. We're here for relaxation. It's quarantine, baby. Stay inside and have your conversations at home. And if you must leave to do it, just keep it down out there. That's all we ask. More. Oh, and another thing coming right at you after this. Welcome back to and another thing back from the PSA. Again, a friendly reminder, if you are for some reason having hidden conversations with the rest of your family, please do it quietly in your car, not on speakerphone for all of us to hear. Thank you for tuning in. Again, welcome back. More and another thing coming at you. Yesterday, some big news dropped here in the city and in the state of New York. And that is that after having been told that we would all be mailed forms to fill out so that we could apply to get mail-in ballots sent to us at home so that way we can vote on a full electoral ballot here in June, on June 23rd. We were under the belief, us naive New Yorkers were under the belief that we would have a full and functioning election. First, they announced that there would be no Queensborough president race, which is fine. We can live without a Queensborough president race for now. They have an interim person serving the rest of the 2020 term. They're going to have an election in a year or in November to decide who's going to take that interim seat back for a 1-year term. So the people that are running are still running. Maybe this opens the door for our good friend JVB to hop back in at some point here. Who knows? So they already took away the Queensborough president election, which, again, not a big deal for anybody aside from those of us here in Queens. However, then the next day they decided to say, you know what? At this point, the presidential primary is all symbolic. They don't need to have the presidential primary in New York. What's the worst that could happen? Maybe Bernie wins it. And yes, that is the worst that could happen for him, is that Bernie wins it, because then you get into a delegate count situation. It's not like Bernie can get enough delegates to win. It's not like Bernie's trying to win the presidential election at this point. All it would be a chance for Bernie and his supporters and his delegates to go to the convention with a few more delegates and a little bit more power behind their platform. And now the state and the city of New York have said, you know what? Too bad for them. They don't get to have that extra power behind their platform at the convention, which will be needed and has been allowed to happen in every election in history. It doesn't make sense to take away the largest city in America's voice electorally. It makes no sense to do that. And I know it wouldn't, in the grand scheme of things. New York's Democratic primary doesn't matter for the presidency this year. At one point it did. It could have mattered big time, but at this point it doesn't matter right now. Now that Bernie has conceded, now that Biden is running away with it, now that Biden is clearly the nominee for the Democratic Party, we don't necessarily need to vote for the candidate. It's done. It's over with. However, it would have been nice to have the opportunity to go and vote for Bernie Sanders and say that that is the Democratic Party platform that we believe most in. It would have been nice for us to have the opportunity to go and stand with other New Yorkers and say, you know what, we are tired of living in a system that works only for the people in this town that sell overpriced real estate, for people that come here and do ad work and make millions of dollars off us, the consumer, and off us, the worker. It would have been great to go and vote and say, you know what, we want a share of that. We want a wealth tax. It would have been great to go and vote for all the progressive policies that we have talked about all year long and since the start of Owen and everything. And since progressive policy, that's just in terms of this show that we've talked about. I mean, even longer than that. But instead, the city of New York and the state of New York said, no, we don't want to hear it, which sucks. Sucks so bad. Because not only are you dealing with a situation where you're having trouble getting young people to show up to vote anyway. Bernie Sanders was right. If his campaign had led to the record youth turnout that he was saying he could put out there, instead of the 14% that ended up showing up, there's a very good chance that Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden are in absolutely different positions today than they are. That's a big what if, and it didn't happen. It didn't happen. And you know why that is? That's because young people feel like their vote doesn't matter because they've seen time and time again that their vote ends up not mattering. In 2 presidential elections alone, in our lifetime, in the lifetime of someone who is 28 years old, twice that vote, that popular vote, hasn't meant a goddamn thing. Once in 2000 and 2001, whenever Gore lost to Bush, and obviously everything happened in Florida with the recounts and that election being stolen, and the popular vote not mattering there, coming down to the Electoral College, robbed the popular vote of an election. 2 elections technically already in our lifetime, again 2001 and of course again in 2016. Add in the Russian meddling in 2016, then you add in the countless other cases of, voter fraud in Georgia. Just other times that we have seen votes be suppressed and votes forced to not matter. And that even counts into these primaries happening the way they do. There's a lot of opportunities for tweedisms to happen and manipulation from establishment folks, and it's a process that allows there to be a lot of cynicism around it already. And by canceling a primary that, again, would be largely symbolic, but a symbolic primary that mattered to a lot of people nonetheless, by saying you can't have that, that tells a lot of people, again, that their vote in the end doesn't really matter. And that's not the right thing to be telling young voters that you need down the road 10, 15 years from now, whenever Republicans have their next shot at a Trump presidency or a type of Trump presidency, or who knows, maybe even we end up with a Don Jr. running in 10 years and we're all like, holy shit. Or maybe Eric for some reason. Maybe somehow Eric or one of the McCarthy twins or somebody. I don't know if McCarthy has twins. It just sounded good. Anyway, there's a chance where down the road Republicans have another shot at a Trump presidency, and with someone with some competency. This could be just like a test run for them. They put someone competent out there. Maybe Paul Ryan finds his way back into the thread of things. But either way, the last thing the Democratic Party needs right now is to disenfranchise more voters that were already disenfranchised about Bernie not being the nominee and about votes not mattering for people that live in minority populations and underprivileged populations and places where people are underinsured and all of the socioeconomic categories that get left out and people that get left behind, politically speaking, on a daily basis. Whenever you tell them that their vote doesn't matter in the largest city in the United States, and you say your vote is not going to happen for the president, that says that your vote doesn't matter. And that's not a way to have a democracy or have the ability to tell people, hey, you need to go out and vote. That makes it harder for people like me, who are trying to get people to go vote, to get them to go vote. Or hard for people that are canvassing to go door to door and say, hey, you should go vote. Why would someone be more inclined to go vote now whenever they find out that the state of New York can just say, hey, no presidential primary? But yet we're going to have all the other elections that are supposed to happen that day, and we're doing it to keep you safe. But that kind of gets muted out whenever you're having an election for all these other things. It doesn't make anybody any more safe. So I digress. And Bernie had a good point with this and that. It does give Trump kind of an opportunity to cancel the November election. I don't think he'll do it. He said in a news conference that he won't do it. So I think that there's a chance that regardless, the president's not going to cancel the November election. That could just be a little spook that we all have, a little thing we have to worry about because we do have a wannabe tyrant as a president. So it is something we have to have on our mind. What Bernie forgets is that portions of Trump's base, or Trump's staunchest part of his base, think that this is a hoax. So if he cancels the election for a disease that's supposed to be a hoax, I just don't think it works well with his voters, and I don't think it would matter. And that may be a moot point anyways. His followers are really like cultists and do whatever the president says to do and go with whatever he says, which we'll talk more about here in a minute. But Bernie's right whenever he says that this gives the precedent for the president to say, hey, you know what? Polls look bad for me right now. I'm going to cancel the November election until we can get this economy back on track. And then the polls will look better for me. Then we can have the election. It does kind of give him some precedent over that. Is it a long shot to happen? Yes, absolutely. Does it make sense for him to do? I mean, if he wants to be president again, maybe. But this takes us to our next point here, and that is that no matter what the president decides to do, whether it's cancel the election in November or have the election in November, I fucking hate that we're even talking about that being a possibility. It's important to remember that while Trump is the weakest president we have ever had, he has probably the worst case of any incumbent president since Johnson, and Johnson had the foresight to at least not run for president with everything going awry with Vietnam. Johnson said, I'm not going to run for president. He left it be between RFK and Eugene McCarthy for Eugene McCarthy for the Democratic nomination in 1968. While Nixon was fighting for the Republican side of things, Johnson at least had the foresight to say, I'm not going to run for president. While watching his poll numbers go down, while watching his presidency slip away, he had the foresight to do that. We're not going to talk about all the electoral parallels between those two elections. That's for a different podcast. But there is a reality here, and I think it comes from Trump's base being as staunch as it is, that Trump doesn't have to think about not running for president because he's kind of guaranteed 30% or less. I'm hoping it's less than that, but about 30% is kind of where he's likely to get. And despite the fact that we have 60,000 people dead by the end of this month, likely, I know it's the 28th, but we're at 58,000. We're averaging at least 1,000 a day, so there's a good chance that we get to 60,000 deaths by the end of this month going into May. And there are people who are either in too deep to their commitment to Trump and what he stands for, that it is literally their personality, which is something to remember as we go on, speak here today, and close things up. Despite the fact that there are so many people applying for unemployment insurance benefits that states' websites won't allow for any more people to apply. And again, don't forget how many people have died here. No matter what, some of these people, again, have ingrained themselves so deep into Donald Trump and the new GOP, which is a scary thing and a topic for another day also, that they are fine to ignore the realities literally in front of them. It's to the point that where they have so much skin in this game for this person that his skin is their skin, so to speak. The lumps he takes are the lumps that they take. They identify with what he stands for. Donald Trump is them, and that is a bad thing, and that is why we end up with defenses of this president that amount to being, hey, ignore the president, he's being sarcastic. The, hey, just ignore the president defense that we're now getting for people to defend the president. And I don't know if you have ever heard the saying, ignore him, he's just being sarcastic, or ignore them, they're just being funny. But there's a key phrase in all of that, and it's ignore. These people, after the president endorsed getting chemical disinfectants into the body, after he proposed that, tried 3 separate defenses to make it seem like the president, one, either didn't say it, meant something else, and then the latest one is that he was being sarcastic. And each of these arguments are not against the president. Every argument they use to deflect from his criticisms is another indictment on him as president, which is a hilarious thing that these Trump supporters do. Every chance they get to defend the president, every defense they use ends up being an indictment of the president. For example, there is the defense of again, ignore the president. He said he didn't mean to say disinfectant. And what does that say whenever the president says that he didn't mean to say disinfectant? That's just saying that the president's bad at picking his words. The president is ignore the president. He's just a bad communicator. You know? He's the president. We can't expect him to be a good communicator. You know, he's great at other things like travel bans that allow 40,000 people to come in, but you know, he got a tax cut for all those rich people, but he didn't mean to say disinfectant. He's just a bad communicator, that's all. And can I say that there's nothing more dangerous right now for us to have than a president who's a real shit communicator? With him not being able to communicate dangers of certain things or the dangers of the situation we live in right now, he is a huge danger to us. He is the danger also. He is part of the virus. I hate to make that joke because everybody's making that joke, but he is kind of part of this. And let us not forget that every time they say that Trump didn't mean to say something, oftentimes he'll double down on that thing he didn't mean to say and go on Fox News or have a clip played of him on Fox News where he doubles down on exactly what he said, just like he did this week where he went on and started talking about how he'd heard that disinfectants, they work on hard surfaces. And then he pointed to his hands and he pointed himself and referred to himself as a hard surface, saying that if it works on the hands, why can't it work inside the hands? And he even mentioned disinfectants that are just disinfectants. He said Lysol. He said you can put them on your hands and it knocks the virus out. Like that. He said that. He said hand sanitizers that go on your hand can knock the virus out. There is no mistaking what the president wanted to say there, and he doubled down on it on Fox News. So every time you say the president didn't mean to say something, he did mean to say something because he's a dumb man, and you have staked too much of your reputation on this very dumb man. Let's see, what's the second defense we have here? He was just processing out loud. This is the other one. This is the Dr. Burke's defense. He's just processing out loud. Bottom line, if the president, again, the man everybody wants, that 30% of the population seems to want to stake their reputation on, requires a minute to process recently received information regarding household disinfectants that kill the virus on hard surfaces. If he needs a second to digest that, and in that second of digestion, one of his thoughts is, can we possibly drink it? Can we possibly inject it? Is there a way that we can get the bleach in the body? There is a major problem with the president. If that is the way he, one, processes, and two, has to process out loud at the age of 70-something, then there is a very serious problem, mentally speaking, with the president. So to say that he's just processing out loud is just another great way of saying that this president is very, very dumb. Very, very dumb. So your defense of the president in that case, another indictment of the president. It was sarcasm. And this is the defense the president is running with, was that he was just being sarcastic. For one, you can hear sarcasm. There was no sarcasm in the president's voice whenever he said that maybe we could find a way to get the bleach inside the body. That's not the exact quote. I know it's not the exact quote, but you know what I'm talking about, and you know what he was saying whenever he said there's a way to get disinfectants inside the body. Two, you shouldn't be sarcastic when, again, close to 60,000 people have died on your watch in a month and a half or in 2 months, however long it's been. And three, if any president did this, not named Trump, and especially if it was Obama, imagine the outrage these people would have if President Obama said he went up during a briefing and decided to be sarcastic. Imagine if that was the defense the White House went with. Oh, well, we were being sarcastic whenever we did such and such thing. Oh, the ACA healthcare website's not great. Well, we're being sarcastic. Like, imagine if they took something from the Obama administration, any scandal from it, and the president said he was just being sarcastic, like he was ironically wearing a tan suit. He would have been in an outrage. And it's only because of who he is. And all these excuses show that the president, one, isn't fit to lead us, and every defense shows that you have a little more skin in the president's game than you should. It is likely because, and this is for the people that still defend the president to this day, it's likely because they see the seedy side of Trump and think that you should be allowed to be that way too. I know we've talked about it on here before, that is what is at the heart of these Trump supporters, is that they are mostly hate-filled people They want to say the hateful things the president says without the repercussions, because that's what they thought they would get with the Trump presidency. It hasn't turned out to be that way. They haven't gotten their wall. They haven't been allowed to say the N-word whenever they want. They're not allowed to run in and yell at hospitality workers. The entitlement hasn't come to them the way they thought it would under a Trump presidency. There's too much. These people have too much in the game of Donald Trump, and that's a bad thing. And if people want to make him part of their personality the way they have, and it's true, people have made the president part of their personality, then just let them be that way. No use fighting with them over that being how they are. No use pleading with them that they are smart people. Remember when this administration is over. It's bound to be over at some point, whether it's in a few months or, God forbid, in 4 more years. It's likely that Trump, his friends, his family members, and others close to him will go back to lives that would have been different regardless, even if it weren't for coronavirus. Lives of ostracized people, for the most part, from polite society. As they should be. They'd be annexed off from their friends, from social events that they might have normally been on the top of the list for. They would be social pariahs, and it's likely that anytime you see a headline, or you'll see headlines about Ivanka and Jared going out in the town in New York and getting heckled at bars, and not being able to go to such and such steakhouse, or not being able to go to such and such vegan restaurant, or whatever. All the vegans in New York. Holly weird. Anyway, it's likely that anytime people in this administration, anytime people in the Trump family, anyone involved in this, if they go out, it's likely that they're going to get some form of heckling, some form of ostracization, some form of shunning. They're not going to be welcome in society the way they were before they decided to let their lives become a part of the president's, before they decided to stake their entire reputation on a man who launched his presidential campaign coming down a golden escalator talking about how Mexicans, again, are rapists. That was what he launched his campaign on. These are people that put stake of themselves into this man. So it's likely that whenever they go out, they'll be ostracized. So, for these people that are willing to turn away on social media, and people that are willing to on Facebook go out and defend the president and attack other people that are trying to clean up the president's messes, keep him from endangering lives and not doing enough to protect the people he was elected to protect, which we know he didn't do early on. Every time they say it's fine to treat the president the same way that you would treat any president, despite his shortcomings, every time they demand respect, remember that these are the same people that are going to be demanding that respect whenever Trump is out of office. And I don't think we should treat the random Trump supporter who you run into online any different than you would treat Ivanka or Jared or Conway, Kellyanne, or any of them. If you'd boo them, you should boo them too. Because if people are willing to stake their reputation in a man who is willing to, again, do anything he can to make himself look good, even if it means getting people killed, thousands of people killed, ruining the lives of thousands and thousands of families, at any cost, as long as it's not to him, if they're willing to stake their reputation in that man, then that's their reputation, and that's the reputation they have. And I don't think we should forget it. I don't think we should be quick to forgive a Trump supporter. I don't think we should. I know we have a lot of people and families that are more aligned with that, and if they're having trouble coming around, if you haven't been able to talk to them, keep trying. That's your family. You need to get them to come around. But if it's a random person, fuck them. These people want that to be their reputation. They want the reputation of the people that defended the most racist president in our nation's history. So let that be it. If they want to defend the man that's killed 60,000 people with his inaction, documented inaction that we now have proof of via White House briefings, let them. They're pariahs too, just like Ivanka and Jared, just like they want to be. Thank you guys for listening to and Another Thing. We had a great pod today. We had a great episode today. If you've made it this far, you might as well hit the subscribe button. I think there'll be one here. If not, we can find a way to put a subscribe button in the corner here or over here, right? There's a way for me to do that. I can put a button in?
I think so.
I can put a button in?
I'm not sure.
Well, we'll find a way.
They'll find the button.
If not, there's a button below the player, so you can subscribe to us here on Spotify. Or, listen to me, you can subscribe to us here on YouTube via that button that I'm pointing to on the screen. Or if you're on Spotify, you know where to find us on Spotify. Subscribe there. comment on us, share us, do all the things you got to do. Subscribe, share, follow us. Oh, and another thing. Thank you for listening. We'll see you on Friday. Have a good week.